One producer said to me many, many years ago, when I was desperate one day, he said, remember, you put your coin in the slot machine every morning, whatever happens. You don't know the day it's going to pay off, but one day you're going to hit the jackpot. You have to remember to put that coin in there. Luck is when persistence means an opportunity. I started off when I was 15, 16, and actually I was really interested in documentaries, in film, and I wanted to do wildlife documentaries. So I sort of started off with that. Then I obviously graduated. I went to high school in France, even though I'm Swedish, and I thereafter went to Los Angeles. I went to UCLA first, and I studied some anthropology, and then I actually applied to the American Film Institute. I started to do short films, short stories, and I realized that's what I want to do. And then, obviously, thereafter, you have this long road to get there. I worked a lot in post-production. I got jobs as an assistant editor, so I worked a lot in editing before becoming a director. I find that editing is the last rewrite of the film, in a way, dramatically. And it helps you to shoot, to be smart when you film, because you actually shoot what you need. Always a bit more than you need, but you know what you need and what you don't need. And it gives you an overview of what you're doing. And I find it an incredibly interesting process, because the timing of the shots, the time that each shot takes, is so important and can change everything. Before working in the States, I obviously worked a lot in France and Sweden. And there you finish your episodes. You do the notes for everybody, and you actually finish it off, and you're there for the mix and for the music. I get copied on all the notes from everybody. And I have to find the solutions for them when they have notes on my episodes. And I think it's, in a way, sometimes I find it pretty smart, because as a director, I know every shot I've done. So I'm pretty good at fixing stuff when it needs to work. In America, obviously, in episodic anyway, you have to deliver your cuts, and then it's in somebody else's hands. You have to learn to let go of that, to give it up.
Pictures up.
Pictures up.
Pictures up.
Camera speeds 2. Awesome. Take 2. Mark.
I was a bit scared on my first day of Madame Secretary, because I had never shot in America, and I said, is there anything that's going to be very different? So I expected to say, like, what is going to be here? And in a way, once you arrive on set, you're so focused, you have to, like, you forget about your surroundings. I'm probably much more scared if I have to do a live interview and talk about myself. And I found that much more difficult. I would be scared if I wasn't prepared, I didn't know what I want. So that's scary, because then you're lost, right? But if you have, I mean, you know the scene, sometimes it can be annoying, sometimes it can be difficult, you can be very tired, you can have very difficult actors, but you have just to figure it out to make it work. And in fact, once you're on a show, whatever the show, whether it is The Unlikely Murder or Lord of the Rings or The Witcher, whatever, when you're there with a DP, the monitors and the actors, and you're on sets, you go into your tent, you watch your take, you go out and you talk to the actors, you sort of forget the surroundings, you forgot what's on, because the work is always the same. It's to do your best and to be the most creative of what you have in your hands. So obviously on the Lord of the Rings, you have more toys to play with, more cranes, more time, more blue screens, you've got something much bigger. But the heart of the work you do remains the same. And it remains the same whether it's in Sweden or France or America. I mean, you don't change it.
Counterpart was a science fiction, very human story, grounded in a lot of truth and reality, very relatable to audiences, and shot mainly in studio and in a closed setting and confined space that was very manageable. And then the next time I worked with Charlotte was on the top of a mountain in the South Island. Literally her first day, well, my first day of filming with her on Lord of the Rings was helicopters up to the top of a mountain, beautiful, sweeping, picturesque landscapes around us. And the work remained the same. So there was she wasn't overwhelmed. There's an ease to her directing, no matter the setting, no matter how grand or epic the scale may be. Budgets were different on the two projects, and yet her work remained honest and true.
I sort of come from editing still, and I find it very important, the flow of a series. And when I direct an episode, I always look at the last shot of the previous scene to decide what the first shot of next scene is. So I always try to decide before I come to set, obviously, what I'm going to start a scene with and a finish.
Let the world tell me.
I usually like to start with inserts, new episodes anyway, with something very tight. I love inserts. Because I feel like it's more important to get into details about a character than the geographical space. I don't want to set the space right away. I want to set the character first. And I think it brings something specific about the character, about an object he likes, something he holds, something on the window. And I think it draws our attention into the series better. I find it very conventional to first establish where we are and then sort of tell the story. I like to establish later when I can. It's always about keeping the audience's attention.
She's incredibly insightful about how she sets up a shot. And I think people forget that if we don't have the aesthetic element of filmmaking, it's actually doing a disservice to actors. So you can have incredible emotional life brought to the screen because of the story and what the actors are doing. But if you don't have the visual context of that, then you're losing so much. And I think that's what sets Charlotte apart, is she brings those two elements together. And at the end of the day, it doesn't only benefit the series or the film, it benefits the actor's performance. We are made to shine if the visual aspect and the elements are also as strong as the emotional life of the story. There's a real specificity to how that character is being portrayed. The colors, the lighting, everything about the shot has to amplify the voice of that character in that moment. And I find, especially with Counterpart, that the symmetries of the shots a lot of the times reflected the inner workings of Claire and the characters. And it brings the character to life in a way that is uniquely Charlotte.
When I did The Outsider, for instance, which is an episode that I did that I find very visual, and I really liked my work in The Outsider. It's not only thanks to me, it was first, I think it's a style that Jason Bateman gave to the series that he wanted. And when I interviewed with Jason, it was very interesting because he said, we don't like coverage. Don't do too much coverage, do your work as a director. Do your shots, do something interesting. And so that's actually something very challenging and very inspiring to work that way. And you get a feel when you sit in front of your monitor, you have the feeling of what works and what doesn't work. I work very much on instinct. They did 33 frames a second for some scenes, and you realize, especially in the very last scene, when they're all on the parking lot before the shooting starts, and you look through the scope. And when he looks through it, I slowed everything down in the parking lot, and that rhythm that was different creates tension by just slowing it down a little bit. 33 frames a second is slower than 24, but it's not, your interpretation is not like a slow motion. It's just like the time is just slowed down just a little bit. So So each time you come into a series with a new cameraman, a new DP, and that has a very specific style, you have to shoot in a certain way. I always like to be behind something. I love reflections, and I think it has a voyeur type. So I like to be behind the camera, and I guess it makes me feel that I'm behind something and I'm spying on people. I'm spying on people's lives. And I think it has to do with that, but I also aesthetically, I think it's so much more interesting. I feel like you give another dimension to a shot by filming through something, having a foreground. So I think it makes it less conventional too. Also, being in the middle of a frame, I feel you give a sense of power to somebody. She's just her is very lonely. Actually, I don't think that scene was in the script when she was waiting, but on set, I had seen that room, and I had seen that I could film through the window, so I added that. I love filming through windows, people sitting through windows. I love also characters who are at the bottom of the frame when there's a lot of space above. There was this Polish movie, Ida, and I thought framing was so interesting. Because it draws your attention also, because it's different. And here it was really the sadness, the loneliness. I like the lines around her. I love foregrounds, and I love Dutch, which is like French déboulé. Sometimes it's also to make it visually interesting, so you pay attention to the frame and you pay attention to the moment. Sometimes it's that the actress is losing balance, and sometimes it can just be very interesting angles because you see that there's some incredible lines, and the shot will look more visual and more interesting if it was Dutch. And sometimes, like in Jupiter's Legacy, it was during the sex scene, for instance, to make it more intense. What I hate doing is to put characters in the middle of the frame, what you call center punch. And I keep that for very specific moments, like in The Unlikely Murderer. Fustig is because he's this loner. He's always on his own. I feel like he needs to take over the frame, so he's there. And he's also the danger and everything. When he was by himself, he was always right in the middle of the frame. Otherwise, I do like to put people very much on one side, or I don't like always the symmetrical side. I like to have them put on one side or the other. And mainly, I like to do what you call short-siding. It's like when somebody's looking to the left, I would put him on the left side of the frame, instead of the conventional side when they are on the other side. But so my framing is very specific, and I always think about it when I frame a shot, and I speak to the operators about it.
Misha, I know you said it was a miracle if the backup lasted more than 3.5 weeks, but is there any way...
Very unlikely. But that's not even our biggest problem.
What are you talking about?
You know, away, we had a sort of limited budget to tell a very big story in space. So, you know, we really looked for directors that were used to telling very intimate stories, but could also deal with huge special effects. The show had a lot of wire work. It was very exhausting. And Charlotte, you know, I had been a fan of Wallander. I had seen her French series, The Disappeared. You know, she could do all those thriller scenes, those chase scenes, special effects, and yet her intimacy was just beautiful. So, you know, we were just sort of meeting people and then seeing, like, do they get the script on the page? And she just came in. We felt, oh my God, this woman just deeply understands the story. She knows exactly what we need to achieve. So we felt incredibly confident when we hired her. And like with everything, the show changes so much as you start shooting it. So by the time we got to episode 8 and 9, we had learned so much about how the show worked. We had learned how our budget worked. We had learned what the actors were willing to do, what they weren't willing to do. So she sort of had to come in at a certain point and, you know, be totally flexible. It was a very male-heavy environment, and just little Charlotte, you know, comes in and, you know, she can really take over the space and really command and bring confidence. And so it was just thrilling to work with her.
It's really important to be good at both things. I mean, you have to, it's in a way when you learn to write. You first learn to spelling, and then you can do your style. So in a way, I feel like all the technical aspects are how you learn to spell. You're learning everything about it, and then you have the freedom to create within the space, to find the emotion, to find the drama. You need to be very familiar with the technical aspect in order to go further. So you need to know the lenses, you need to know the cameras. You can't film every series in a very conventional manner. You need to come up with a style that fits the story you're telling. And I'm a believer that actually the story sort of decides what style you're supposed to film. And I like, for instance, Steven Soderbergh, because he films his films in a very different manner. He goes from Erin Brockovich to Traffic, that don't look the same. I mean, I like to find interesting frames, but I don't want it to take us away from the story.
It's another reason that Charlotte was so perfect for that episode, because I could tell that Hillary, as her character Emma, was struggling with the love triangle, you know, because she had taken it on as an actress. And in our original version of episode 9, they got back in the ship and they tore their helmets off and they started kissing. And at some point, right before, near shooting, Hillary was like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't believe my character would do this. And that's always a challenge as a showrunner, but even more as the director who is trying to serve you and also like listening to the actor. And she's the, you know, Charlotte's the one who has to get in there and be there while they do it. So that became a really interesting conversation. And through that conversation with Charlotte, it really helped us, the writers, to see that Hillary was right and that we could do everything that we needed without the literal kiss. So I feel like when a director comes in and is able to do that and help you be more honest in your storytelling, then you know, that's a perfect collaboration.
I find the sexual tension or the love between them much stronger because actually they didn't kiss. So I really wanted to hold that back. I always feel like people trying to, their courage, their stoicism, I find that's something moving there. Hillary is a very instinctive actress, very smart actress. So I think she was the one who was right there. Very important to learn to rely on the actors. I think that very often they have an opinion about their character and what they would do. And they have if you work with intelligent actors, they really get it right. They really feel like my character would do this and not that. And you need to learn to rely on that.
You can tell that she loves actors. And in this industry where you would assume that anybody who chooses to direct or produce loves actors, it's not necessarily true. She's a rarity in the sense that she has a real passion for collaborating with actors and bringing out their best.
Hi.
Hi. She asleep?
Yeah. How was work?
Yeah, it was fine. I met Spencer.
And?
For me, the hardest scenes are the ones where you think you're doing nothing, because it's not on the page for you as much. You're not digging into vocabulary or the words on the page or movement that's been planned for you, like choreographed. If you're just sitting there, like I was with Harry Lloyd, and having a conversation about something so simple as a baby's name, it's the real life moment.
I was thinking about the name, Spencer. Do you think it's too late to change it?
Not if you don't.
I think maybe something a bit more girly. Like,
How about Sarah?
with an H?
I think as an actor, it makes me feel most stressed when I have those moments of real life simplicity. Those in-between moments that usually don't end up on film. And Charlotte is so good at putting you at ease so that you just have a conversation and you're, as if you're sitting in your own living room, And so Harry Lloyd and I really, I think, got to that scene and were so tired by everything. I think that was probably one of the later scenes that we shot after a long day's work, and we wanted to go home, which made it even more complicated. But I think having Charlotte at the helm, it just makes it so effortless that you sit there and you have some very simple conversation, and it's true to life.
Not all directors can do that. And, I mean, because really you're coming in after, I mean, 4 other people have been there. And, you know, the directors that can quickly come in, that can build trust, that make the actors feel like, oh, this person knows what they're doing, they know what they want, they know how to make their day, they know how to, you know, get a better, better performance out of me. I don't know what makes one director able to do that and another one not, but there are certain people that just can walk in and really, you know, the cast, like their shoulders drop and they feel confident.
I feel in order for a scene to be really emotional, it should not be shot too emotionally. In Disappearance, when we do the scene in the morgue, when she recognizes her daughter, there were 2 ways to play it. She could come in there and break down, right, and start seeing her, I mean, obviously to see a dead child lying there. She could break down and go crazy. Or she walks in there and she's strong and she keeps it inside and she tries not to cry. And by her trying not to cry, I feel like it's much more emotional. For that scene, actually, we had a reference, and that was a scene in a film by Clint Eastwood called Mystic River. And we remembered the scene in the morgue when Sean Penn comes in to see his daughter. He looked at the body in the morgue, he said, yeah, that's her, and then he left.
So, it's Katie. It's my daughter.
We knew the pain he was in, we knew everything, but that scene was so strong just because of it. And Alex and I mean, we spoke about it a lot. And I did something else to Alex on that day, is that obviously the makeup of the body was incredible. I decided not to show them before the scene. And they zip up the body bag and show her face. And that's where actually Alex discovered the actress's face for the first time. And I mean, she was shocked. And I think Alex had planned to be even more cold in the scene, but she was so shocked when she saw it, so we got something in between. It was very interesting. I researched the makeup, the body makeup a lot from Tweet Pics. I have all the pictures in my phone still.
That's my little girl.
Charlotte has taught me so much, not only about the balance of the visual and the emotional elements of filmmaking, but also just as a woman in this industry, the conversations we've had when we go to lunch and dinner. I'm really proud to call her a friend and a mentor. She has taught me that, you know, as a woman, we see so much in this industry. And oftentimes, I'm sure in her very long career, she's had to turn a blind eye, right? To be able to just say, okay, that is not okay with me, but I have to navigate this so that I can be in a position where I can take care of my actors and I can take care of this set and I can go on to another project and take care of that set and make sure that women have opportunities after me. So she's taught me that sometimes in order to stay in the ring, you take punches.
When you make a big series or small series, I mean, there are days where it's really difficult. When it's really difficult, everything goes against you, you have difficult people, the thing is to always, whatever happens, you have to continue. Sometimes you can be boiling inside and you won't basically want to slap everyone, but you have to be you continue being very calm and continue. I believe in something you say in French, la force tranquille. But you have to be strong always, especially as a woman, because we're always being judged as women. We can't get angry like the men. We can't get hysterical like the men, because that say, oh, she's, or I mean, even crying, right? I mean, that say, oh, it's because she's a woman. She's emotional. So you have to be, we have to be, as women, I feel, we have to be even better and stronger and more professional than any of the men. I feel like I'm gotten to a point today where I have paid my dues for a long time, and I'm sort of deserve the position I'm in today. But in order to get there and to feel confident enough, it took a long time. And I'm sure it took longer for me because I was a woman, at least in the beginning. We have sort of paved the road. And I mean, by being a woman and make it, we probably, I hope, make it easier for young women starting today. And because they deserve to do as much as the men, obviously. But I don't think anybody's entitled to anything. You work hard and you get there.